I really want to try to summarize my journey the last few years regarding this topic, last few months in particular, so that you guys could understand the chronology of it and what happened when and who was involved, so on and so forth. Look, debating and deliberating about this topic is something I've been doing with family members and staff, Cash among others, for years. It comes up on a frequent basis. It comes up on a regular basis. I kind of took an extra step this off-season by starting to talk to people that are with other organizations that I know that are in this industry about just why this is such an important topic, why having beards and being able to have beards is so important to this generation. I also talked to a lot of people that are not in the industry at all that I know. And those people were closer in age to the players than they are to me. So there was a lot of research done on that front. What did I learn from all these conversations? And I'll get into what happened earlier this week in a minute. This generation, you know, the vast majority of 20s, 30s, into the 40s men in this country have beards. You know, our new vice president has a beard, members of Congress have a beard, the list goes on and on and on in this country and in this world. It is a part of who these younger men are. It's a part of their character. It's a part of their persona. Do I totally relate to that? It's difficult for me. I'm an older guy who's never had a beard in his life. But it's a very important thing to them, and they feel it defines their character. It is also the norm in this country for all the reasons I just talked about. So there were a lot of conversations had. I certainly learned a lot. But the most important thing for me was to sit down face to face with several of our players and several of our senior staff. I didn't want to do it over the phone. I didn't want to do it in a group setting. I did it in one-on-one settings. I felt that would be more productive. And I did all that Monday of this week, the first full day of squad practice. There were a lot of things that were told to me that resonated. There were some things that were told to me that were concerning, even if they happened to be more of a hypothetical in nature. But the bottom line is, from those conversations, all the conversations I had in the off-season and the last few years with people like Cash, I did make the decision that the policy that was in place was outdated, and given how important it is to that generation, and given that it is the norm in this world today, that it was somewhat unreasonable. So I made the change, talked to the players this morning at the team meeting. I think they understand what my thought process was as well. There will be parameters to this, and they know that, just as we have parameters to our other policies and guidelines. So that's kind of the chronology of the whole thing, and I mean, obviously I'm here to ask questions. So,
Meredith.
What are those parameters?
We're gonna put out a policy probably today at some point, Meredith, and you'll see. But we did make it clear. I did make it clear to the players that it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a well-groomed, clean look. It is important to the leaders of our team, who I talk to, that we maintain that disciplined look.
And Austin Wells just said on the field, it's been talked about, it's been discussed over the years, but nobody thought that the policy would ever actually change. What was the initial reaction when you had informed the team that the policy was changing?
Well, it was a room crowded with all the players, all the staff, so I didn't really bother to look at, you know, and try to gauge anybody's reaction. I mean, I just can't really answer that.
Brendan, to the left.
Hal, you said on Monday you had heard some things that were concerning. What were some of the things that were concerning that you heard that really moved you?
Yeah, so all of you know me well enough to know I don't like addressing hypotheticals, but I'm going to break my own rule today. Because this was a part of my thought process and a part of the decision that I made. If I ever found out that a player we wanted to acquire to make us better, to get us a championship, did not want to be here, and if he had the ability, would not, come here because of that policy, as important it is, again, to that generation, that would be very, very concerning. And, I'm fairly convinced that that's a real concern. But that would be one thing.
Bob, back right.
Al, what do you, right here.
Over to the right, Al.
Got it. Hey, Bob.
Hey, what do you think your father would have said about your decision today?
A lot of people obviously have asked me that. Winning was the most important thing to my father. And again, I think if somebody came and told him that they were, very sure that this could affect us getting the players we want to get. All we're trying to do every offseason, right, is put ourselves in the best position to get a player that we're trying to get. And if something like this would detract from that, lessen our chances, I don't know. I think he might be a little more apt to do the change that I did than people think, because it was about winning.
Over here, Dave and Eric to the right.
Yeah, to the right side over here.
Hey, Dave.
How much part of it during those discussions was kind of the being unfair to players that were traded here? I mean, clearly, Devin Williams was somebody who had a beard, didn't seem too happy about coming here and having to shave it. It seemed like it was a situation where guys are being kind of forced to do something they didn't want to do once they came over. Did that play into it? Just the trade aspect of it?
I'm not going to talk about which players I sat down with. I just don't want to do that. They may later. But I will tell you it was a diverse group in that all of them have been here for a different period of time, some longer than others. And I felt that was important to get a good sampling, if you will. So.
Eric.
Now, can you give an idea of, I know you're not going to name the players, but what some of the things that they may have said to you that resonated, whether they be former players, somebody like C.C. or current players?
Yeah, look, some of it is what I've already kind of been through, which is, this is why it's important to our generation. And, not getting into whether they agree or disagree with the policy that's in place, but why it's important. And again, this concept and belief that we may very well be missing out on players, believe it or not, because of this one particular policy that they find very unreasonable.
Is there an origin or a starting point for you on this, reviewing the policy? You mentioned that it's been several years. Do you remember when something?
I say several years, it may be 10 years. I mean, it's conversations we have all the time, and his staff and I have all the time. And it's conversations that my nephews Stephen and George and other people in my family have all the time. I mean, it comes up frequently, as you might imagine, I'm sure. So, I mean, whether it was 2 or 3 years ago or 10 to 15, it's been a lot of years.
Could you see yourself growing a beard?
I don't even know if I could grow one.
How about you? We're going to find out.
I've never had one. It's a good question. No, I cannot. But look, this is not a, you need to have a beard policy. This is a beard optional policy, and you're going to see some of our players that feel the same way as I do, I'm sure.
Great. Staying over here.
Al, do you know for a fact if you have lost out on any players because they were unwilling to?
No, but again, it's a concern that was raised by more than one person that I sat down with. And again, given that I now understand how important of an issue this is to this generation, it's logical that, it can happen.
And will anything change with the hair below the collar, or is it just the big?
Hair policies, other policies are going to remain the same.
Gary over to the left.
Cash just made a joke about we'll find out if he's going to grow a beard. Does the policy change apply to only in-uniform personnel or to everybody?
The policy change we have talked about would apply to coaches and, yes, personnel in clubhouse and.
Behind the scenes, front office employees as well?
Well, I mean, we have employees here that have beards. I mean, as you've seen. So yeah, it will go past the players themselves.
Brian Hope, right here.
Anything for Cash?
Yeah, I have. In your time here, has this been a topic when you pursue free agents? Can you see this impacting negotiations?
Well, I think to Al's point, this is kind of a situation where there's been so much change in the game. I think this is a little bit of an evolution and a nudge on our part to make an adjustment also and recognize, in our internal conversations over the last number of years, now, you see the uniform has changed. We're obviously honoring to help raise awareness and money for breast cancer awareness or prostate cancer. You're seeing pink hats and pink shoes and blue hats and blue shoes or military awareness weekend, and you're seeing camouflage hats, or you have successfully negotiated with the Players Association. Now the old Yankee tradition was only black shoes, spikes, but now players with the latest iterations of the basic agreement can wear any color shoes and any color belts that they might want. For instance, we have a sponsorship patch on the uniform, for instance. So there's a lot of things that have changed over the course of time, and so a lot of the discussions we've had with players past and present, I can intimately share with you that whether it's an amateur scout being in a room with a potential drafted prospect that is going to go somewhere pretty good in terms of a draft area, and every now and then, not much, but it does come up like, well, I prefer not to get drafted by you guys because of that policy, or we brought CC here, but CC, it was a hesitancy because of the facial hair situation, because he liked to have that, and that's something when you come here and you make the choice to come here, you have to make a choice to park that. I actually had a non-roster invite discussion this spring where somebody's like, well, the agent's shared back now, he's just got to decide whether he wants to shave or not. So it's a real thing. Whether it is the ultimate end-all be-all preventable thing, I can't say. It's an individual. We've had a lot of great people that have come here to put that uniform on and ultimately comply, and everybody here is willing to comply. That's the great thing about, they understand, they have a platform to share and discuss, but then, even in today's iteration of our locker room, people would express, it's not what I want, it's not my preference, but I will honor, the rules of the land. And, but again, I think what, Hal Steinbrenner with his family has done is they've engaged the past and the present, and I've been here a long time. So even though there has been a policy in place, I've got two guys in camp, Andy Pettit, every 5 days, especially in the postseason, or Roger Clemens, they get that shadow showing up, and then, day of game on a game they're starting, I'm not going to be like, hey, or the manager of the day, whether it was Joe Torre or Girardi or whomever, like, hey, you got to shave today. It's like, they got the game ball today, I'm not going to mess with it. But it was something that they valued. They've shared that, it's something they felt better with, stronger with. You've seen the history of our last 30 years, and players, they sometimes they have a little bit more on a certain day in season than they normally would, until we'd have to go swing around and deal with it. But it's important to some people, and I think ultimately, Hal Steinbrenner has gotten that piece to, there might be a little bit of an adjustment that's worthy of considering and ultimately now doing, and that's all this is about.
Right here in the middle.
Thank you. Al, going back to the 90s, the Simpsons mock situation with Don Mattingly back then, just looking back over the years, how fans, pop culture have laughed at this very known tradition that the Yankees have. And now you're relaxing it, but only slightly, as you just said, there's still going to be some guidelines there. So can you speak to, take fans inside your mindset? Why for you is it important, even as you change the rules, to still be keeping some kind of guidelines up and true to this series?
That's a great question. Look, we are a family business. My dad was in the military. He believed that a team should look in a disciplined manner. And, that's where this all really came from. He believed that cleanly shaven, shorter hair, although, the 70s, he had his battles with players in the 80s, was a necessary look for the New York Yankees. And it's a look that he wanted his team to have, a disciplined look. And we still, like I said, the leaders on our team who I've talked to find that to be very important as well. They brought that up without me even broaching the subject. So we will keep it that way. But very important to my father. But again, my father, nothing was more important than winning. And that's, That's in the back of my mind.
And Cash, for you, your eye for talent, who do you think is going to grow out of the scruff best first?
I mean, it looks like Austin Wells probably has to shave twice a day just to comply with the prior setup. So it looks like he's got something that can grow pretty quick. But anyway, to piggyback on what Hal said, listen, the New York Yankees are different, and we want to remain different. This is obviously a special place in baseball history. That logo has a lot of meaning behind it. And we want our past and our present players to recognize that, and the future players to recognize that. So ultimately, there's still going to be things that we're going to hold on to that are important for us. But I think what just Hal said, more importantly, is always trying to be a championship caliber franchise and chasing winning. But we want to separate ourselves from everybody else and be a little different and make us special. But I do think this is. It's time. It's time for, and it's not an easy decision for Hal Steinbrenner to make, but he's made it over the course of time. Like every decision he makes with a lot of information before he ultimately gets there. And, we're like a gigantic, naval battle cruiser. It takes a little while to turn. Maybe those things turn quick. It might be a bad example, but history and tradition's slow to change. So this is a baby step of making an adjustment that, is, I think, appropriate.
Gabe in the middle.
How, when you talk about clubhouse leadership these days, so much of it comes back to Aaron Judge. What was your conversation with Aaron like, and what impact did his words have on the decision?
Well, he and Garrett Cole and Stanton, I mean, we've got some great leaders on this team, and I met with all of them. Again, it goes back to a lot of what I started off by saying. I kind of talked about my thoughts and why I'm considering this. And I want to get your honest opinion. That's why it's just you and me, and we're not doing this in a big group setting. And as I said, the meetings were very productive. But I mean, yes, when Aaron came up, right, through our organization, through our minor leagues, I mean, he's a Yankee, true Yankee. And he cares about the team and the franchise greatly. So obviously, Garrett as well. Again, I talked to Stanton. Said I wasn't going to say who I talked to, but they are, three of our leaders. So of course, yes. I mean, his comments resonated with me, many of them, as did the other players I talked to as well. So.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
How did any of the players you spoke to argue for keeping the beard?
No, not by the end of the conversation. I mean, I could tell there were a couple, that have been here and are used to the way things are. But that was the whole idea of this last step of this long process of mine, was to really get opinions and talk about not just the pros but the cons as well. And I think once we did that, anybody that I was sitting in front of, I think everybody understood that maybe this is something that we should at least consider.
Chris, over left, take a few more.
I have a non-beard question. It's been nearly 20 years since a team that advanced to the World Series lowered payroll the following season. You're currently running a lower payroll than you had last year. Is it your intention to reduce payroll this year?
Our payroll now is almost identical to last year.
Okay.
I don't know what people have to calculate it correctly. You have to take into account how many injuries you're going to have, but make an assumption on that. So that tends to vary numbers somewhat. But we're right at 307, 308. And I think last year we were 310. So we're right there.
Okay. And it's also been reported by many people that you're looking to get under the $300 million threshold. Is that accurate?
I would say no. The threshold is not the concern to me. I mean, the concern to me is, I've said this till I'm blue in the face, I had to change my numbers because times have changed from 10 years ago. But we have great people here. We have a good player development system. Good young players that have come up, the Volpes and the Wells, Heel, and that will continue to come up. Should I really need a $300+ million payroll to win a championship? Does having a huge payroll really increase my chances that much? of winning a championship. I'm not sure there's a strong correlation there. Having said that, we're the New York Yankees. We know what our fans expect. We're always going to be among the highest in payroll. That's not going to change. And certainly didn't change this year. We're right there. Gary.
Sticking on the subject of money and payrolls, there's been some talk about the possibility of pushing for a salary cap in the next CBA. Is that something you would support?
You know, we're right in the middle of a labor agreement right now. I mean, the only thing I'm focused on, seriously, is 2025. I'm not even focused on 2026, much less, you know, what the world's going to look like 3 or 4 years from now. I have been on the record already saying that, you know, I would consider supporting a cap depending on what the cap is and contingent on the fact that there's also a floor. So that clubs that I feel aren't spending enough money on payroll to improve their team would have to spend more. So, I mean, I'm on the record saying that, so I'll say it again, but that's about all I have to add.
Are you concerned, or have you considered that if there were to be a cap, even if there is a floor, you're taking away an advantage from yourself, essentially?
Again, I trust in Cashman and everybody under him that our player development system will stay as strong as it has been the last few years. I mean, that's why we put so much money into it. You know, and I believe that's going to be the case. Now, we have traded away a lot of guys the last few years, but we still have a lot of great players coming up really at all levels. And I expect that to continue, and that's you've seen our young players and how they contribute. I mean, that also has to be a part. You also need the veterans and the superstars, but the young players have to be a big part of it too, and they're going to continue to be for us, I think.
Go to the second row here.
Hal Evan from Fox 13 in Tampa.
Whoa, hey.
Good to see you. I just wanted to ask, how important do you view today with the Rays getting an up-close look at the stadium that they're going to be in for the next year? How much fine-tuning is there still going to be between the organizations based on what the stadium has to offer and what you're going to be ready to provide for the season, just based on what they're going to see today?
Yeah, well, today, I mean, there's been Rays people here for a couple months. I mean, they've been phenomenal. I mean, they've had electricians, plumbers, grounds crew, literally weeks and weeks and weeks. And they were a big part of helping us get this done on time, quite frankly. Turner did a good job. My people did a great job, but they were great. So, I mean, there's been a lot of Rays people here for weeks. Look, it's going to be an adventure. There's no doubt about it. But they've been very thankful. Their people are very competent. And, you know, I think it's going to be as smooth a transition as possible. They're not going to have much time once we leave to do certain things they need to do, but they're going to get it done.
The Rays have said publicly that it's going to be a one-year commitment between the two organizations. Do you still see it being 1 year? Is that definite?
That is what I have committed to with the Rays, with Stu, and also with Rob Manfred. Yes.
In your view, that's 1 year and that's going to be it?
That is where I'm at right now. Yep.